China sits on a staggering $3.2 trillion in US dollar assets. Trillions of dollars, more than any other nation on Earth, quietly held, quietly accumulating. But imagine this. What if China decided to dump it all tomorrow? The thought alone sends shivers through the corridors of global finance. The dollar would crash, interest rates would spike, economies would tremble, and the balance of power could shift overnight. Most people have no idea this is happening right under their noses, yet it might be the single biggest financial risk of the century. You need to understand this before it's too late, because the implications aren't abstract. They could touch every dollar in your wallet, every mortgage, every investment, every purchase you make. This isn't just money, it's a ticking time bomb, and the countdown has already begun. China didn't accumulate $3.2 trillion overnight. Decades of trade surpluses built this mountain of dollars, a direct result of an intricate dance between two superpowers. Americans got cheap electronics, clothes, and furniture, filling their homes and lives with goods at bargain prices. China, in turn, grew its export-driven economy, lifting hundreds of millions out of poverty and transforming into the world's second-largest economy. But there's a catch, a trap hidden within this mutual benefit. Those dollars aren't a weapon waiting to be fired. They're a liability, a web that entangles both nations. Picture it like two climbers roped together on a sheer cliff face. Neither can fall without dragging the other down into the abyss. The system that created prosperity also planted the seeds of potential disaster, and now the world is teetering on that edge, barely aware of the danger beneath. China's dollar holdings aren't just numbers on a balance sheet. They are a fortress of exposure unlike anything the world has ever seen. As of July 2025, China holds $731 billion in US Treasury securities, the safest asset in the world, yet part of a web that traps them. Layer on corporate bonds, currency reserves, mortgage-backed securities, and equity positions in U.S. companies, and the total exposure stretches between $2.8 trillion and $3.5 trillion. The commonly cited $3.2 trillion isn't exact, it's the midpoint, the eye of the storm. To put it in perspective, this is more than Japan, more than the UK, more than all of Europe combined. Can you imagine losing trillions overnight? The scale is almost impossible to grasp, yet it's a reality that shapes every financial decision on both sides of the Pacific. Every dollar held, every bond purchased, every equity stake forms part of a trap neither side can escape without consequences that could ripple across the entire globe. Now, imagine the unthinkable. China picks up the phone, calls its traders, and tells them to sell everything. $731 billion in treasuries hitting the market at once. The dominoes fall instantly. Bond prices collapse, interest rates spike, and mortgage rates soar into the double digits. Homes that once felt secure suddenly become unaffordable. Corporations scramble to refinance debt, defaults surge, and credit markets seize. Banks holding treasuries as assets watch their balance sheets crumble. The Federal Reserve is forced to intervene, printing hundreds of billions just to stabilize a market already in chaos. Inflation explodes, import prices soar, and everyday life is transformed overnight. Electronics, cars, food, all of it becomes suddenly expensive. The dollar teeters on the edge, a financial weapon of mass destruction poised to wreak havoc. Step by step, the impact isn't abstract. It's in every home, every loan, every purchase, every paycheck. This is the nuclear option, the scenario analysts whisper about, but hope never comes true, because the consequences are beyond imagination.
But here's the brutal truth. China can't actually pull the trigger. The moment they try, the dollar would collapse, and China would suffer far more than the US. They still hold $2.5 trillion in dollar-denominated assets, and a sharp drop in the dollar's value would erase a massive chunk of that wealth almost instantly. Corporate debt, banks, trade flows, energy costs, all of it is tied to the dollar. The system they built to create security becomes their own cage. Every what-if scenario turns into a mathematical certainty of self-destruction. This isn't speculation or fear-mongering, it's cold, unarguable logic. China is trapped, and the trap is so tight that no quick move can free them. Every dollar sold against the US would rebound to strike them harder, and every asset lost deepens the peril. They are hostage to their own holdings, and the very thing analysts warn about is exactly the mechanism that makes their escape impossible. China isn't standing still. They know the trap, and they're working on a slow, deliberate escape, one that could take decades. Their strategy unfolds on three fronts. First, gold, buying it steadily to diversify reserves, creating a safety net outside the dollar system. Second, alternative payment systems like SIPs and bilateral currency swaps, designed to bypass the dollar entirely, letting China trade without relying on US-controlled networks. Third, shifting the economy inward, nudging citizens to consume more of what China produces, reducing dependence on exports, and with it, the need for dollar inflows. It's a careful, methodical plan. Every move is measured, every step calculated to avoid collapse. Progress is slow, almost imperceptible, but deliberate. The question isn't whether they'll move, it's whether they can do it fast enough to avoid the slow-motion disaster creeping from the cracks of the system. Each decision, each trade, each ounce of gold purchased is part of a decades-long dance with time, trying to escape a trap that tightens with every misstep. The story of China's escape begins in 2008, after the financial crisis revealed just how fragile the global dollar system really was. From that moment, leaders understood they were overexposed and began laying the groundwork for long-term survival. Gold reserves started climbing, alternative payment systems were built, and the yuan slowly carved out its place in global trade. By 2025, some progress is visible. Dollar reserves have been trimmed, gold holdings have swelled, and the share of trade settled in yuan has risen from almost nothing to around 7%. Yet for all the progress, the pace is agonizingly slow compared to the urgency of the underlying risk. The system is fraying beneath them, like a cliff that's losing its grip one jagged edge at a time. China is moving carefully, step by step, but the cliff is crumbling faster than most realize. Every action they take is a race against time, a high-stakes balancing act between gradual escape and sudden collapse. The trap isn't one-sided. The United States is locked in it too. Policymakers know China holds $3.2 trillion in dollar assets, and that leverage restrains every move. Compare this to Russia. When the U.S. froze $280 billion of Russian reserves, the move was decisive and brutal. China, however, could retaliate by dumping everything, triggering chaos that would hurt the U.S. as much as them. Both nations are caught in a delicate, invisible standoff. The system is fragile, yet almost no one notices. Every decision is constrained by the knowledge of mutual destruction. It's a financial chess game played at the highest stakes, where even a single misstep could trigger domino effects across the global economy. The world benefits from the U.S.-China relationship, yet the very mechanism that created that benefit is also the anchor holding both sides hostage.
The tension is invisible, but it's real, and every passing year tightens the grip of the dollar trap. Looking ahead, the future is a high-stakes gamble with three possible paths. First, an orderly transition. The dollar remains important but no longer dominant, and a multipolar currency system emerges. Asia leans on the yuan, Europe on the euro, and the Americas still use the dollar. A managed shift with no crisis, but it requires skillful leadership and stable geopolitics. Unlikely, but possible. Second, a crisis transition. A sudden trigger, a bank failure, geopolitical shock, or debt breach forces China to dump dollars defensively. The US retaliates. Financial chaos erupts globally, economies crumble, and wealth is destroyed on a massive scale. The fallout stabilizes eventually, but only after pain that touches every corner of the world. Third, the trap collapses on both. The dollar's internal weaknesses, rising debt, and systemic flaws cause a collapse before China can escape. Both economies implode simultaneously, but China, still trapped, suffers even more. None of these outcomes are pleasant. The odds favor turmoil, and the world watches as the slow-motion tension approaches its breaking point. Every choice, every delay, every dollar held or sold moves the system closer to one of these scenarios. Right now, the signs are clear if you know where to look. The dollar's share of global reserves has fallen from 72% in 2000 to around 57% in 2025, while U.S. debt continues to climb at alarming rates, exposing structural weaknesses that accelerate the trap. China's slow diversification, careful gold purchases, gradual yuan trade expansion, measured reduction of treasuries is helping stabilize the system for the moment, but only temporarily. It's like watching a cliff erode slowly under two climbers tied together. Every inch lost matters, every step is perilous, and a sudden crack could trigger catastrophe. The danger isn't abstract, it's in every financial decision, every market reaction, every policy adjustment. The clock is ticking, and the slow erosion of the dollar and the ongoing diversification by China are quietly reshaping the global financial landscape, even as most of the world remains unaware. The ticking time bomb is there, visible only to those who know how to read it, and every passing day brings us closer to the critical tipping point. This isn't just a story about nations and markets, it's about you, your savings, your investments, your purchasing power. All of it is caught in this slow-motion financial trap. The $3.2 trillion hostage situation isn't abstract. It has real-world consequences for anyone who depends on the dollar. Understanding the dynamics today lets you act before the next wave hits. Gold, Bitcoin, hard assets, productive businesses, these are shields that exist outside the dollar hostage scenario. Positioning yourself strategically isn't about predicting the exact outcome, it's about preparing for a system in which even the strongest currencies are vulnerable. Watching the slow erosion, recognizing the warning signs, and taking deliberate steps now could mean the difference between weathering the storm or being swept away by it. The collapse isn't instant, but its effects will ripple through every aspect of life, from investments to daily expenses, making awareness and preparation critical. The $3.2 trillion isn't a weapon, it's a hostage, a trap both China and the US are locked inside, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Every move is measured, every dollar accounted for, because one misstep could trigger chaos. And yet, most people remain unaware of the slow-motion collapse unfolding right before our eyes. But this isn't the end of the story. Next, we'll reveal exactly what China is buying with the dollars they're quietly moving out of treasuries. 3 assets almost nobody is tracking. Understanding these choices shows where smart money sees value when the dollar trap finally breaks. The global financial standoff is far from over, and the next chapter will determine who survives, who loses, and who is caught completely off guard. Stay alert, because the next moves will shape the decade ahead.